I met him at the mall one day. We actually hooked up later that day. He told me I was the sexiest girl he ever saw. He he said I could make a lot of money being so sexy. And I liked the lifestyle, so I just went along with it.
And how often were you working?
I don't know. People would call. They would call all the time. Then things started to get really up. So I tried to leave, but he wouldn't let me.
I wasn't safe until I got out.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Policing York Region. I have Jasmine Defina of Victim Services of York Region, and Jasmine is a human trafficking specialist. Jasmine, welcome to the show.
Hi, Don. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's one of those topics that actually, in a conversation with our producer ahead of the show, he actually said it best: is that it's really too bad that we have to have these conversations, but unfortunately, it is prevalent in our region, isn't it?
Yeah, I hear all the time from people that they don't realize that it's something that happens within York Region. They think it's more of an issue in downtown Toronto or bigger metropolitan cities, and it's really unfortunate, but it is very prevalent in York Region. We're seeing a lot of it, and especially since the pandemic, things have really picked up in regards to human trafficking.
Well, I hadn't heard that before. So since the pandemic, it's actually worsened. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so because a lot of clubs and massage parlors and these sort of things have been shut down, we've seen things pushed underground a little bit more, moved in taking over floors in hotels in the region, moving to Airbnbs, but they're really expanding online. I think with all of these expansions online in general, it kind of gave traffickers and new ideas on how they can exploit women. So it's really, unfortunately, it's picked up quite a bit.
Yeah, no, that's a shame. And unfortunately, the power of the web, we've heard this conversation all too many times in many different areas, of course, as I'm learning, because I'm new to the human trafficking story. I mean, we've all heard about it. As you said, we all kind of, I guess we all just assumed that it was elsewhere. It wasn't here, right?
Yeah, that's a very large misconception that I hear from almost everyone. Every time I speak about human trafficking, a lot of people have this idea that it's like the movie Taken sort of story, or it's over in Europe, or a lot of it is international trafficking, and it only happens to certain people from different areas of life, different walks of life, but it doesn't discriminate. Human trafficking can, get your average girl from the GTA, from York Region, with a good home, good family, good supports. They just need to be in that right situation for the trafficker to grab them. They just need one vulnerability to be preyed upon. And, it's easy for them to get them online with these social media platforms. And, I think most young girls these days have insecurities. And so these traffickers are preying on these young girls, their insecurities online or social media. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that video did it justice. It brought it back to exactly what it is, right? An innocent girl thinking that she's getting into a seemingly innocent situation that turns ugly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that world is really glamorized today in TV and these celebrities that these kids are looking up to. And so, dressing with, a little bit less clothing, they get a little more comfortable, and, it's just one step further, and they're offered all this, money. Girls are making all kinds of money, and they think that they're going to get to keep it. They're going to live this lifestyle, but it really just starts out that way with the honeymoon phase, and the traffickers, they give them a little bit to lure them in. and then they take it back, and these girls are stuck working, up to like 300 clients a day. Sometimes I've heard from girls.
Oh my God, that's terrible. That's terrible.
Yeah.
No, and like you said, it's unknowing to them, right? They don't see what it is that they're walking into, and in the research that I've been doing ahead of time, ahead of doing this show, is once they're there, they feel trapped.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not easy for them to get out. They do a lot of threatening and coercion and manipulation, and really make the girls believe that no one will want them anymore, that they're worthless, that not even their families will want them, that they're disgusting, that they've disgraced everyone that loved them in the past, and that their traffickers are the only ones that want them. They tell them lies about police, law enforcement, and social service agencies, and make them believe that there is no hope, no exit. And so it's hard for them to reach out for help when you're made to feel so little and insignificant and worthless.
That's terrible. What a horrible way to be going through your life, right? To be, I suppose, degraded into the point where you're putting your trust in, unfortunately, in the wrong people, aren't you?
Yeah, it's really sad. Even we do see a lot of international trafficking in the New York region, which is kind of unique for the GTA.
How do you? I'm sorry to interrupt, but international.
Yeah, so we do have, girls being brought over from overseas.
Okay.
We have our domestic trafficking, which is very prevalent, and we do have a significant amount of international trafficking in the region. So girls being brought over to, with promises of a better life, Canadian citizenship, a better life for their families. Sometimes they help them with payments, and then they're indebted to them.
Right.
These ones are really tragic also because, they don't speak the language, they don't know the area, they don't have supports in the region. So it's really difficult to leave these situations.
So people from here or from, localities are actually recruiting overseas, is that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, there's a mixture of, overseas people bringing them and people that are local bringing them over. Another huge, actually 43%, I believe, was the number that I last heard of trafficked individuals in Canada are Indigenous people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they're brought from a compromising scenario already, right? Yeah. Promised a lavish lifestyle, as you were saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they get promised these lifestyles, an education, help to go to university, to make a life for themselves. Sometimes they promise them modeling or acting careers. Right. Sometimes it's like a Romeo pimp situation where it's the boyfriend who lures them in and kind of manipulates them into a situation of trafficking. And then sometimes it's with addictions. They prey on these vulnerable girls. They get them addicted to some sort of substance, and then they feed that substance and they keep their addiction going. And that's how they're able to keep them in. And oftentimes, not always, but oftentimes there's significant violence.
It's all part of it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, unfortunately, it doesn't seem to matter what area of this we're going to touch on. There is no good news or very little good news. But there are some people, there are some women that do actually escape from the claws of this, right?
Yeah, yes, there are. Not as many as we'd like, but there are who escape. It's a long journey. The average girl leaves and returns and leaves again from the sex trade about seven times, they say, is the average. We have some resources in Canada, and the government keeps putting more money into it, and so that we're seeing some positive changes, but there's still large gaps of service. Right. So it's really hard to help to meet the needs of the girls, even if they want to leave, right? Yeah. They don't really have the choice. Like there's no greater or equal, opportunity for them.
No, and I'm sure of that. I'm sure that they feel like they have no place to go, right? I mean, this is as much as they may not appreciate where they are, it's what they know, right?
Yeah, but even with like the housing crisis and in the sex trade, these girls are making a lot of money, and being able to have, traffickers often put them in condos or homes or apartments, or so at least they have a roof over their head. But if they do escape, where are they going? Everything's filled. The shelters are filled. Housing is filled. There's 6 months, 1 year, 3-year wait lists in some regions. So it's really difficult for them to even have a place to leave.
Yeah, I had been hearing a lot of that in recent months. That and I'm sure that is a lot of pandemic driven too. Housing, affordable housing, shelters, that kind of thing are beyond capacity, aren't they?
Yeah.
And that's very unfortunate for somebody that is in need. That's I mean, it's something that we're hearing both federally, provincially, locally.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And that's just one piece of the puzzle, right? So once you've gone through a trafficking situation, most of the time you come in with trauma from childhood already.
Yes. And
you're experiencing significant trauma while being trafficked, unimaginable trauma.
Sure.
And, so then there's the recovery piece, right? Like where you're able to access.
When we come back, Jasmine, we're just going to flip over to a quick break. But when we do come back, I want to talk to you a little bit more about maybe where this stems from. Welcome back, everyone, as we continue our conversation on human trafficking, not only in our region, but everywhere. It's unfortunately, it's one of those things that, fortunately, I suppose we have the teams like the human trafficking specialists with victim services that try to combat this. Jasmine, again, welcome back to the show. Before we were talking about, trying to find people housing, obviously that's a tough thing right now. But obviously, you're doing the very best that you can to offer support to all levels.
Yeah. So at Victim Services, we're a not-for-profit organization that works. Okay. And we work in partnership with York Regional Police and the OPP Aurora Detachment. And what we do offer is 24-hour emotional support. So, if a girl's in crisis, they're able to call in our lines and speak to a crisis counselor 24/7.
Well, those lines are actually open 24 hours a day?
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
And we also help with the practical assistance side. So once we've spoken to an individual who requires some assistance, our crisis counselors are able to help them to meet their practical needs. So we actually we work with the Ministry of Attorney General. They have funding, which we call the VQRP. And with that, we're able to help survivors who need, emergency housing. There's some funding for that. If they need tattoo removal, we can help with that. Food, basic needs, that sort of thing. And there's also available funds for trauma counseling. And so the crisis counselors will help connect the girls with, or the individuals with the help that they need within the community or whatever region that they end up moving to, because we know oftentimes with human trafficking, the individuals are transient and they go from region to region, or they might want to go back home to where they, came from. And so we can help to get them there we can help them to get into rehab or detox or into, human trafficking specialized programs. We work a lot with Safe Hope Home in Durham or Deborah's Gate out in BC, Voice Found and A New Day in Ottawa. So we do have like human trafficking specific organizations that specialize in long-term rehabilitation. But at Victim Services, we can connect them with all of these, practical needs.
And that's one of the things that we're always touting on the show is partnerships that, not only York Regional Police, but Victim Services and other organizations. It's like a well-oiled machine. Everyone does work together. Everyone does talk together. You had mentioned with OPP and other law enforcement agencies. This and many other areas are shared platforms, aren't they?
Yes, yeah. Yes, we really believe in our partnerships and working together, because it is not a one-person job. Like we all work very closely together to make sure that all needs are met, from housing to, emergency supports, foods, emotional supports. And we realized that for human trafficking, it's more of a long-term case that we would work with the individuals. And so we catered that within our region so that we're able to work closely with our clients on a longer term basis. Typically, we're just a crisis response organization and kind of like the hub to connect outside.
Right.
For human trafficking, we definitely work on a longer term basis with our clients and check in with them often to make sure that they're doing okay.
Yeah, so it's not like you just address an issue and walk away from it. You actually follow it through and make sure that people are not just getting the assistance they need, but that you're following through on it, right?
Yes, absolutely. We want to make sure that it's the right fit and that their needs are being met. Sometimes people have different needs and different programs, don't work for one when they work for another. And so we want to make sure that it's working for them and that they're okay. And if they have any other needs come up, that we're there to support them.
Yeah, right. And I guess that's part of that partnership piece too with the law enforcement agencies, because they're also in that same role, right? At the end of the day, we all want everybody safe, and every scenario is different, and each scenario takes a slightly different path, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes, we work very closely, especially myself, with the human trafficking team at York Regional Police.
Right.
To help, form a more client-centric, like they're very focused on a client-centered approach and not just, focusing on the case, but they're really focused on making sure that the girls, the individuals that they come in contact with, their needs are being met, they're being taken care of before arrests are even made, which I think is incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's we're always going to talk about this partnership piece, right? But it's very true. I mean, you talk about like yourself as a human trafficking specialist, but then you're going to be dealing with counselors. You're going to be dealing with other associations, including that with YRP and OPP. You said that I believe you said you deal with the OPP and the Aurora detachment.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So there's yet again, back to those partnerships, right? I keep going back to that video and how, obviously she wants out, right? She wants out. What are some of the steps that, if you were to give somebody some advice, what would you be suggesting to somebody as far as how do you get out?
I mean,
the loaded question.
Yeah, I was going to say every situation's a little bit different, right? It depends on, what type of trafficker. Is it like organized crime? Is it an individual? Is it the Romeo? Is it a guerrilla pimp? Is it a CEO pimp, right? And it's, it has a lot to do with safety. So obviously, the first step would be, making that call and reaching out, realizing that, the police are like the human trafficking teams are there to support, and they truly do care. And victim services, we work in partnership with the police, but we're also able to keep, client confidentiality, and, we work from a place of non-judgment and inclusivity and client-centered and trauma-informed, and we have a collaborative approach. And so I think just knowing that and having, the ability to reach out to organizations, or even the human trafficking hotline. We have a national hotline, and they're able to help provide resources as well.
Right.
I think the first step would be reaching out to one of those organizations. And it would be, whichever, the individual felt would be best suited for them.
Sure.
And that's the first step. Yeah.
Yeah, we've, one thing that we have seen over in recent years is some of the advertisement. They've partnered with York Region Transit. We've seen it on the back of buses, and we've seen it in bus shelters and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So, with the hopes, I suppose, that unfortunately the people that are involved in it, they might actually get a glimpse of these, and that, wow, there actually is help out there, because they must feel very helpless in the scenarios that they're in.
Yeah. I mean, it's when you're stuck in a hotel room or motel room or Airbnb, you're not seeing these signs, you're not seeing the resources and the phone numbers. And so it is difficult to even know that there's help out there. So that's a challenge, right? Is getting that information out there. I mean, in a dream world, we'd see, information pamphlets in every room.
Yeah, right.
But
yeah, that's not going to be the case. No, that's not, unfortunately, that's not going to be the case. Now, so you can't help but to wonder. So where do these? I'm just going to call them bad guys because I don't have a better word for it. But where do these bad guys come from? Like I've heard the word pimps, johns, owners. How is that established?
Yeah, so, well, there wouldn't be pimps if there weren't johns, right? Like if we're not purchasing sex and exploiting these young women, we wouldn't have traffickers or pimps. So I think for me, that's where it needs to end first. Like, we need to hold our men accountable. It needs to not be okay to exploit women and girls. I mean, majority of individuals, I won't say all individuals, but majority of individuals in the sex trade, whether trafficked or not, do not wish to be there. They didn't grow up wanting to be, an escort or a sex worker.
Right.
They have an option. They didn't have a greater choice, right? Like, I think if they won the lottery, 30 million today, I'm pretty sure they'd retire.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wouldn't. Like, I love my work, right? So I think that's like a huge misconception. Like, there are a few who say that it's empowering and they want to be there, but majority don't. And so, we have people purchasing sex and believing that these girls want to be there. Like, no, they don't. They don't want to be servicing you. And you're basically facilitating their exploitation. Like, you are raping them.
Yes.
And that's where it starts. And then, the traffickers, they obviously they don't grow up with, good homes and they don't come from good families. They're often, underprivileged and have rough lives and significant trauma. And, that's kind of what they turn to as an opportunity to make money. And, it's really important. It's a system issue. And yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is a system issue, and it's something that, fortunately it has actually come to light considerably more in recent years. I don't think that we would have been able to have this conversation even as recent as 5-10 years ago. It is more. It's more openly talked about. It's more openly. I'm not going to say it's openly accepted because it's not. But we are becoming more aware that, wow, this actually happens. I can tell you that the first, when we first started talking about this conversation in particular, for one, I had no idea that it happened in our backyard. I had no clue, and I'm pretty involved in our community, right? Yeah. And that's the general sense I get.
Yeah, well, I think people just assume that where Nice homes, there's no, trouble. But I mean, let's be real. Who do you think is affording a $6,000 a month rent?
Yeah.
Who can afford that are typically buying homes unless they have illegitimate income.
Yeah. Well, no, it just like how we opened the show. You were talking about the very same thing. It doesn't necessarily. It's not neighborhood driven, right? It's the people that are purchasing. That's and they can come from all walks of life.
Yeah, and you're going to make the most money working in affluent areas as a sex worker. So, it's much nicer to make $1,000 performing a service than 20.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that, actually, you just kind of wrote the picture there that it's true. It's more than likely to be in an affluent area. But, Jasmine, this is one of those topics that, again, I wish that we didn't have to have these conversations, but I certainly thank you for the opportunity of sitting and chatting with us today. And I do look forward to speaking with you again. Jasmine, thanks so much for being here. Folks, that wraps up this episode of Policing York Region. It's been great having you, and I look forward to seeing you again. Take care.